Hi, it's Karen Griffiths here, and I'm going to do a short video on feeding Serama. Particularly today I'm going to talk a little bit about the sort of supplementary feed that I give them, because as you can probably tell from looking at me, it's very cold up here in North Yorkshire, and in fact it's been snowing this morning. So I'm lucky enough to have an allotment right next to my birds, so I'm just going to show you some of the stuff that I might give them. I took the time to actually sow various lots of green leafy vegetables for them. We've got some black kale here, and this is some fallen over unfortunately, but this is some purple sprouting broccoli, which I'm going to enjoy later in the spring when they start throwing out shoots. And there you can just see a little bit of rainbow chard, another leafy vegetable that the chickens really like. So I'm just going to gather a few of these and then show you how I feed them. I've given these green veg a good wash under the tap on the allotment, because you don't want to give them any well, you don't want to transfer any diseases to them from birds. So I've sacrificed a few leaves off the purple sprouting broccoli, some of the kale, and I'm just shoving it into one of these fat ball containers. If you just chuck the leaves in as they are, you'll just find, because birds don't have hands, they tend to just trample them more than they actually get to eat, because they find it quite hard to tear bits off the leaves. Whereas if you stuff them into these containers, then the birds can tear little bits off, and it's much easier for them to eat it. And they've got a little bit of the chard as well. You don't want to give them too much chard, because I've read somewhere that the toxins in it, a bit like rhubarb, can cause can prevent the absorption of calcium. So there we go, I'm going to stuff that, but I'm also going to add, because it's winter time and because my female Serama are actually in an open sided run, I'm going to give them some of these fat balls. Now these are quite expensive ones. They've got seeds and they've got mealworms in them, and my birds absolutely scarf them down, and that makes sure that the girls have plenty of fat on them so that they don't get cold. I would certainly not be feeding them something like that in the summertime, because fat Serama have trouble laying eggs and you start getting prolapses and things. It's very important to pick your girls up as often as possible and feel their weight. See if they're getting too fat or too thin, and that will sort of give you an indicator of what sort of food you need to up and what you need to stop, reduce. Okay, so I'll just get that all sorted and then we'll see how they like them. Now you can hear the birds. You can see that they've spotted that I've got one of their favourite treats coming in, so they're all getting ready to mob me. This is a mix of Serama and a few Japanese bantams. So there we go, we'll hang that on there, see how they like it. That's my silky boy. He's the only silky that I've actually got in an outdoor pen. All the rest are at home. It gets really pretty cold up here in the winter. So there you go. A nice treat, a nice wintertime treat. While they're occupied with that, let's just have a little look at their staple food, which is a layers pellet. Now, I'm on a budget, so I tend to buy fairly cheap layers pellets. This is produced in a mill not far away, and I'm lucky enough that I have a feed mill that will actually deliver it to my door every week, so get a couple of sacks of this every week. The big thing to notice is that it's small cut, so for a small bird you don't want a pellet that's too large. And the other thing to notice is that I feed it in a container with little divisions in it. If you use something like this, which is what I've used in the past, I find that the birds just throw half the pellets out while they're busy searching for that extra tasty tidbit. So something with divisions, and they tend not to be able to chuck it out. And it also means that everybody gets a bit of a fair share as it's hanging. Now, another treat that I might give my birds in the winter, or perhaps getting them ready for going to a show, is pigeon conditioner, which you can see is lots and lots of small seeds. And this pigeon conditioner, I've actually added some sunflower seed kernels, which is fatty for the winter time, and those kernels will again put a bit of fat on. Now, I normally wouldn't feed them this in the morning, and also probably not while they've got the treat of fat balls, but they do love it, so I'll just give them a little bit as they've seen me come in with it. And as you can see, they absolutely go mad for it. Yeah, so something like this is a good thing to feed them early afternoon, so they've got enough time in the winter to clear it up and get it into their crops, but they've had the morning to feed up on their staple food, which is the pellets. But this will fill their crops if you give it to them in the early afternoon, and that will send them to bed nice and full, and digesting overnight will keep them nice and warm. It also has a lovely smell of aniseed oil, which makes it very pleasant. I have had it infested with flies before now. I kept it in a larder in my house with a little sort of open vent, and I think some flies were attracted by the smell of the aniseed, and they sort of laid little maggots in the seeds and hatched out, which is rather unpleasant. Yeah, keep it somewhere warm, cool and dry, but away from flies. So there you go, lots of happy little birds. We're inside one of the sheds that I have, and I like to make use of all the space, so I've got a little flock of pullet Serama and Japanese bantams on the floor. There's one of them there. And now the shed's quite tall, so I haven't hung the food. I've actually placed it to keep it up out of the bedding. I've placed it on one of these Quality Street plastic containers, and they're really, really useful because they've got a little lip on them so it doesn't tip over. And again, I've got feeders with divisions so that they don't throw too much out. You can see what they have thrown out, but not as much as they might have done if it was an open one. So, and a little drinker on legs, so that keeps it above the shavings as well, so it all stays clean and you don't waste too much food. For the birds inside the cages, again, I'm using these little plastic Quality Street boxes, and the waterers, these were recommended by Claire Flower. These are really, really good. They hold about a litre of water, and you can see that they need a bit of a clean. They've got a little bit of algae in them. Now, I try to get these clean as often as possible, but there you go, you can't do everything all the time. Those are Japanese bantams, and here we've got some of the Serama boys that I hatched last year. They've got slightly smaller containers. They work on a vacuum, basically. Fill them up with water, and then it just sits in the little drinker cup there. And they're fed from D cups. And you always have one or two birds that just chuck all the feed out from the cups, which is a bit irritating. So if somebody can think of a cup that you can make them stop them doing that, I'd be very grateful. Now, I found the boys much less interested in things like fat balls and greenery, and because I have my boys all in single spaces, single cages, I tend to, for them, if it's the winter time and I'm a bit worried about them losing condition, then what I might do is get a little bit of vegetable oil, mix that in with the pellets, and then if I think they need a real boost, I might then put a spoonful of this rooster booster, which is a sort of multivitamin with probiotics, and because you've put oil in with the pellets, then the powder tends to stick. Although actually just putting a pinch in the pellets as well. The boys, it's remarkable, they seem to sort of notice it and will pick it out really in a sort of making that squeaky noise they make when they like something. But a little bit of vegetable oil puts a little bit of fat on them, and this adds a little bit of nutritional boost in the winter, especially as they're not going outside in the winter time. They're staying indoors, and although I keep the doors of the sheds open as much as possible, on a day like today, I'll probably keep the doors shut because it's actually very windy and cold, and I don't want the little ones particularly losing too much weight. Been up and collected some more greens, and I've used one of these square fat containers. I think you can actually get blocks, can't you, that fit into these. So I put some more greens off the allotment on one of the fat balls, and the pullets are going to get that. Just hang it on a hook so it's just up above the floor, so they get a good old tear at it. Other things that I might give them would be that's a little little twisted back little girl that I keep because I'm a bit soft. Other things that I might give them would be apples, if you can get bags of past their sell by date apples from the supermarket. And pony carrots. You can get big sacks of pony carrots if you've got a local feed store for horses. And the boys, again, they're not interested in them at all, but the girls, particularly the Japs, will have a go at them, and they teach the Serama. That's a nankin, by the way, in case you're wondering what that huge one was. And a little frizzled Japanese bantam girl that I hatched last year that I'm very pleased with. But there are a few Serama in there as well. Okay, so there you go. Some tips and hints on feeding your birds over the winter. Right, back in the house now. Some of the growers that I haven't got room for outside, and some silkies as well. I'm not very keen for them to go outside. But just a couple more feed items in the house that I wanted to show you. Again, these are what I would call winter supplements. This here is micronized pea flakes. And this, they're obviously crushed, dried and treated, and they just last forever. And you essentially just soak them in a bit of warm water. And is absolutely packed with protein, so a little goes a long way, but the Serama really love a little bit of that. The ones that are outside, I certainly wouldn't feed it to the ones that are in the house because it would put far too much fat on them. And in the next sack, Edward Boothman put me onto this, our president, and this is these are dried grass pellets. And again, you soak these. The birds aren't so keen on this, so what I would tend to do is just put a little bit of that in with some of the pea flakes, soak them together, and then mash that up and give them to me in a separate bowl in the morning. Grit is something that I should talk about. This is a mixed grit, which has got flint and shell and limestone in with it. But a large size like that I would only feed to the Japanese bantams and the nankins. Whereas for the Serama, I would use a cage bird mixed grit. Yeah, which as you can see is much smaller. And I would just get the birds in pens get a container with that in all the time, but the smaller birds, I might just mix it in with their feed, or give them a little D-cup with a little bit in, which they'll just take as they need. And I think that's it really. The growers in the house, they're getting growers pellets, which I've got here, again from my feed merchant. Again, a nice small cut size, higher protein than a layers pellet and not so much calcium.